you've kind of heard the story. It's true. I graduated 150 out of 153 in my high school. I attended Hamilton Baden, and came here to UC Blue Ash, and I wasn't sure on what sort of my future would hold. Probably a little bit like some of you may have felt that way or may feel that way. And so today I just want to talk about really kind of a few concepts with you. Talk about vision, talk about sort of your team and who's surrounding you, and then talk a little bit about sort of what it takes for you to sort of get through sort of this stage of your life. The most important thing is to finish up here, do well here, get your associate's degree, and then matriculate, hopefully, to Uptown campus, but if you go somewhere else, just to finish out your 4-year degree. So I wanted to talk today, really the one question I want you guys to really think about, and something I've been thinking about a lot as I decided to make a contribution to the university to support students like you, who I was you 25 years ago, or longer than that, yeah. Trying to fudge on the age thing here, yeah. But the question, I want you all to think of, and what I want to talk about today is think about who's with you in the turn, okay? So I don't know how many motorcycle riders we have in here, but I live in Washington, D.C., so if you ride a motorcycle there, you're taking your life into your hands because people there don't drive that well. In addition to the wrecks you see politically, there are a lot of wrecks with motorcycles. And so, but the interesting thing about motorcycles is that if you're riding with a passenger and you're going in a straightaway, right? So let's say you're on I-75 and you're just going south, you're fine, right? Until at some point you have to make a turn. And when you decide to make a turn, let's say you're turning to your left, your passenger, whoever's riding with you, when I turn left, what they call in cycling lean direction, right, is to my left. If my passenger resists my lean direction, I'm going to crash, right? And if you're in Washington, you're going to crash and get killed, and other places you're going to crash and get hurt very badly. But it's all about who's with you in the turn and when you're making those turns. And so I want to talk to you guys about that because I think many of you are probably at a point in your life where it is a turn moment for you. So for me, UC Blue Ash was one of the places and organizations that was sort of with me in the turn. And when I think about that, and I want to just ask you to think about some of these questions, and then when we open up for Q&A, we can get into this a little bit to figure out what advice I can maybe impart to you to help you answer some of these questions for yourself. But what's your vision of your future, right? What vision do you have of your future for yourself? I sat where all of you are at a point, and I had to have something to sort of hold on to go through all those moments where I wanted to quit, which were many, and felt like quitting, but kind of keeping that vision. So it's an important sort of concept. And then who's with you in the turn, right? We'll talk a little bit about that. And fortunately, I had some great professors here at UC Blue Ash that were with me in the turn. I was leaning in a direction. I wanted to become a lawyer, and I wanted to become an entrepreneur. And I had a professor here named Phil Luther who told me I could write, and I'd never heard that before. And that was a turn for me, right? And he was leaning in my direction with me. And so I was able to make that turn. So, and then we'll talk about what does it take, and I'll go in a little bit. Did you all print that schedule? Did Robin? Okay. Oh, you already got, okay. Yeah, so we talk a little bit about what it takes, because it's great to have, big visions. It's good to have a great team around you and a good group of friends that are moving in the same direction, but ultimately it's going to boil down to you and your execution sort of day by day. And so in thinking about, what is your vision of your future, and thinking about at this stage of your life, I know, again, you have to kind of get through the day-to-day, make it to class, make it to the library, but what do you want for yourself? And where do you want to go? And What do you think you'll get out of achieving? The other thing I want to just challenge you to think about, like when you have your vision for yourself, being a nurse or being a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, or working, being a detective, what do you think you'll get out of that, right? What is it that you think you're going to get out of doing that thing? It's just something that I would just challenge you to sort of wrestle with now, because you may end up in a situation where you really haven't thought through why you're doing what you're doing. And so it's better to kind of wrestle with some of these questions now. And so when I think about, again, when I arrived here at UC Blue Ash, I knew that I wanted to be a lawyer, but being a D student, it really, there's a big gap, right, between being a D student in in high school, and then going off to go to law school. And so it's like, what do you do sort of in that gap, and what keeps you sort of moving towards that? And for me, it was, having a vision for my life and dreams, and keeping those in the forefront, right, of what I'm working on. And so, does that look like a building where you would want to live? Anybody in here would want to live there? Nobody? Really? You wouldn't aspire to live in a place like that? So do you think it's possible for somebody who lives here to end up living there? Okay, right. And so this was where I lived when I was a student at UC Blue Ash. And so I lived in an apartment, probably the second window over and back. And it was a tough time in my life. I worked a full-time job while I was a student here. Actually, my first year at UC Blue Ash, I actually worked 2 jobs. And I went part-time, so I only took maybe 3 classes. And I would come to class in the morning from 8 to 11 or 10 or whatever, and then I'd go sell, and I sold garage doors, right? So I'd go out and I sell garage doors from 11 until 7 or 8 at night. And then I'd go to the library, and I always studied at Uptown campus at Langsam Library, because I think it stayed open late, maybe till midnight or certainly 11. And I'd go study after I sold garage doors until the library closed. And then for year 1, right, and thinking about being an intern, for year 1, I actually I'd go home at midnight, and I'd get maybe 2.5 to 3.5 hours of sleep. And then I was a janitor at a Shell station on Route 4 next to where the movie theater is. It's under renovation now, but there's a Shell station there. I was the night janitor, and I worked there from 3 in the morning until 7. And so then I'd get off from the Shell station, I'd go home and change, and I'd come out here to class. And I did that my entire first year at UC Blue Ash, right? So I was, as you can imagine, always exhausted, always touch and go. That was a turn moment for me. I could have easily, if a professor would have said, "You're wasting your time," or "You're stupid," or anything discouraging like that, I probably would have crashed, just because I was exhausted all of the time. And luckily I was at this place where I didn't get any of those things. I got encouragement. But that's where I lived, in about a 350 square foot, apartment. And I use this just as an illustration, not to put up material things or whatever, but it kind of hammers home the point. This is where I live today, right? So it's one of my homes. My primary home, I should put it that way. And my closet in my primary home, my best friend who's a police officer up in Hamilton, I remember he came to my house when we got finished doing the renovations, and he said, "Man, this closet is bigger than your Roach Motel place you used to stay at on Vine Street," right? And I thought about it, I'm like, wow, that's true. The closet in my master bedroom is bigger than my entire apartment where I live. Now, to get from that place to this place took a lot, right? And that's what I want to try to just share with some of you all today, and then think about that. But the main thing, though, it was about having a vision, right, for what I wanted to accomplish in life. Where did I want to be? What did I want to do? Those were some of the things that I had to keep at the forefront. But then having those things as sort of top of mind, you have to think about what happens in the turn. And so in the turn, here's what I want you to think about. And I've heard this quote sort of put out there in sort of two different ways, but I'm going to use the number 5. So there's a quote that says, if you think about the 5 people that you spend the most time with, you're going to be an average of those 5 people. And I've heard somebody say 3, but let's just use the number 5. I want you all to think just for a minute about the 5 people you spend the most time with, and then know that you're going to be an average of those 5 people. And if you don't like what that average looks like, I would encourage you to think long and hard about who those people are. Now, I want to be clear, and when I talk about the 5 people you spend the most time with, the 5 people I spend the most time with aren't the 5 people I love the most, right? Like, they're not necessarily like, I don't spend my best friend who's a cop and great guy, and he's my best friend, and I give him my kidney. He's not in the 5 that I spend the most time with. Nothing against what he does or anything like that. It's just the people I choose to spend the most time with offer me something different, right? And we focus on different things. And so I want you all to think about that. And that gets into sort of what happens to you in a turn. And so what's a turn situation for you guys? So for a lot of you, how many sort of fresh first years do we have in here? Okay, so for you first years, a turn is leaving the home, right? Or leaving high school is a turn. It may be your first job, right, is a turn. You may fail a class, or you fail a midterm. I guess you're getting around that time period. You may have a major relationship breakup, or you may have suffered a loss. One of your parents may have died, or a good friend may have died. Those are all turns. And so thinking about sort of who's with you, right? You're leaning in a direction and making sure that you have people that aren't going to resist the direction that you're trying to take your life to cause you to crash. And again, I found that here at UC Blue Ash, and so I would encourage you to, work with your professors here, look for mentors, whether they're here or other places, and then look for other students who are going the direction that you're going. I was just talking with a group earlier, and I remember when I when I matriculated from here to the Uptown campus, I met a gentleman, and he became one of my 5 at that stage of my life. We both wanted to be lawyers. So on Friday nights, instead of going to whatever party, we just would go later in the night. we would go study for our LSATs at the law school. And we picked the law school because we're trying to keep a vision, right? Being in the library, seeing the law books. But we did that every Friday night. He's probably one of the most successful attorneys in Ohio now. Guy has his own plane and all of that. But I think about, we were with each other in the turn, right? We both worked full-time jobs. He worked at General Motors. So I used to say, man, you got a real job, right? Like I sell garage doors. I might as well flip burgers or something. You work at GM. You like part of a union and but was in the engineering school. But we were there to encourage each other, and we were both leaning in the same direction, right, of our future pathway. And we spend a lot of time together now. We're both busy, but we certainly connect up. And he may not be in the top 5, but he's certainly in the top 10 of people I spend time with. But I met him here, right, when I was at University of Cincinnati. And I had study groups here. Guys that I was in a study group here with at UC Blue Ash, we went on to go to the College of Business, and all ended up doing well because we kind of stuck together and were in study groups together and encouraged each other and pushed each other, because all of us at that point, leaving UC Blue Ash to go Uptown, we were in a turn, right? And so we leaned into the same direction. And so I want you guys to think about that, sort of who is with you when you're in the turn. So the what does it take? The first thing I'll say is nobody can do it but you, right? You're the ones that's going to have to execute. And so whenever I'm in DC and my friends, I developed a certain set of habits here, some good, some bad. Some people might call me a workaholic. It's one of the things I'm working on in my personal life, to force myself to take time off and relax a little bit. But I did get into so you have to keep some balance too. I would encourage you that, because you can go too far. But I developed a certain way of being and living here, and it was just go, go, go. And so, but when my friends in DC, they're like, oh, Broyles, what are you working on? What deal are you in now? What are you doing? And I just tell them, I say, oh, I just chop wood, right? I don't get into details on my businesses. I say, I chop wood every day. Oh, what are you doing? I chop wood. I wake up every day and I chop wood, and that's what I do. And so the chopping wood part is what I learned to do here, and it's simply about execution, right? So every day I have a ritual that I practice now. I just turned 50. Whew, I feel, yeah, AARP time. But when I lived in that little apartment there, I did the same thing. So the first thing I do, I make my bed in the morning, right? So one, it's my first accomplishment of the day. Two, it gives me a place to pray, an orderly place to pray. And I used to think I was silly and crazy for actually having that in my mind until I heard Admiral McCraven, who gave a commencement speech at like University of Texas, and he said, he talked about lessons of Navy SEALs. He's like, make your bed. I'm like, hey, and he said the same thing. He said, you make your bed. It's your first accomplishment. And he's like, if you have a bad day, at least you come home to a nicely made bed. And I was like, that is funny. I'm glad and then I was reading a book and I learned Nelson Mandela had the same habit. Nelson Mandela would make his bed first thing. He'd even make his bed when he was president and staying at the Ritz-Carlton. He wouldn't let the cleaning staff, he would make his own bed. And I thought, wow, okay, it's a couple other weird people like me in the world who do that. But really it gives you a sense you've accomplished your first task of the day. And what you have is a handout of, that's literally the schedule that I kept. And I'm not saying you have to have it just like that, but just in terms of like keeping, how do you get from, kind of point A to point B, getting your degree, accomplishing the things you want, you have to have some order and some structure around it. And you got to make some choices, right? So with a schedule like that, I made some choices. I never saw a movie from 1987 to 1992. My friends make cultural references, and I have no idea what they're talking about, right? I didn't have a TV, right? So I kind of lost that time. And I'm not saying you have to do that. And now you can put movies on your phone and stuff like that. So you probably wouldn't have to anyway. But the point is, you got to make some choices about, what you're willing to give up and what costs you're willing to pay to achieve what it is you're trying to accomplish. And so that's my schedule. And I kept a very similar schedule, probably added on 2 hours to that schedule when I was in law school. And so that's, again, thinking about sort of, what does it take to sort of, make it through. So, but having structure and then is an important sort of part of that. And then I talk about, seek advice and guidance. There are people who have been through, that's part of the reason I'm here. I've navigated some landmines, so I'm trying to give you the benefit of the wisdom that I've had, and we'll certainly, again, jump into that more in the Q&A part. But seek advice and guidance. You have people here who have been here before you. You have professors who care about you. Talk to them. Spend time with them. And then perseverance, right, and determination. If you really, it's how bad do you want it, right? Like, how bad do you want it ultimately is the question, you're going to have to answer for yourself, because there are going to be a lot of things. Let me give you one thing for sure. Whatever your vision is of what you want to do and sort of where you are right now, there's going to be a whole lot of stuff trying to block you from reaching that point. A whole lot. And I'm not, just life, the way life is, or you're going to have the times you're going to be sad, money's going to be an obstacle, time may be an obstacle, family dynamics may be, there's going to be a lot of stuff. And the question is, are you willing to plow through all of those things? Because I can assure you, I wanted to quit from where I was to where I am now 1,000 times. But ultimately decided I'm going to stick it out. And I'm glad I did, right? And I'm on the other side of that. I'm glad that I made the decisions that I did, primarily to just keep chopping wood and sticking through. And sometimes not knowing how it was going to turn out, but knowing that I'm going to leave everything on the field and keep trying and keep pushing forward and keep striving towards my vision. And so, and then I tell you, know your story, we all have, sort of stories, and think about, what's your story? Sometimes people have a story where they say, oh, I'm stupid, or I'll never do this, or I'm this ethnic group, and we don't do that. You have to know your story, right? And it has to be yours, and it has to be your own narrative about who you are, because there's a whole bunch of chirping out there from people, especially nowadays. Because you got this device, and everybody's Snapchatting and tweeting this and that, and so you got all kinds of noise coming in, and you have to learn how not to be distracted, and you have to know your story and what it is and what you're trying to accomplish. And then finally, as evidence in the schedule, the other thing is, when you get to, what does it take, is you have to execute daily, okay? So, and the way I did it was so daunting for me, because I was like, okay, I got to get through UC. One, I got to make sure I have food on the table and a place to live. And then two, I got to pass, but I got to do well, because I want to go to a top 10 law school. So you start thinking about all that stuff, and you can just say, forget about it, right? Because it's just too daunting. So I took it in bite-sized chunks. I'm like, today, I'm going to get up, I'm going to make my bed, I'm going to go to class, and then when I get out of class, I want to go sell hopefully one garage door or two, and then I'm going to go to the library, and I'm going to put in 5 to 7 hours tonight, and then I may do some more, and then I'm going to get up and do it again tomorrow. And that's how, and I just manage my life on a daily in that spreadsheet. And I took it day by day. And lo and behold, when it was over with, I couldn't believe when I got called to President Stager's office at the University of Cincinnati. They were probing me on some stuff. And they're like, well, you're one of the finalists to be the commencement speaker, right? So I was 150 out of 153. That didn't even occur to me that something like that would happen. I literally just kept to that schedule. I didn't think about being the commencement speaker. I thought about my law school prospects. I needed to do well to get into a top law school, but that was about it. But I gave the commencement address for the class of 1992, when we had 4,000 students graduating, not 150. And so, but I did that by chopping wood every single day, right? And by having the right people with me in the turn, people I met here at UC Blue Ash, my fellow students, professors, administrators, donors, other people who donated and made it possible for me to be here. They put their money into the campus. I owe it back to them to show them that they didn't make a bad investment, to honor them and the sacrifice that they made, right? To invest in you. Then you're gonna owe it back when you guys are in position. You should. You might not, but you should. I would hope you would think about people who thought about you enough to give of their time and their money to care about you and to tell you that you saw where I lived, and to go from that to where I live now, and but it's all possible, but it required me to put in work, and I had to execute on it daily. All right, thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.